The Legend of Jigong Chapter 52.
We drop right into the viewpoint of a character named Chai Yuanlu, and he's sprinting through the woods, and he executes this flying tackle on a man hanging from a tree.
Which is, frankly, a brilliant narrative hook.
Yeah.
The author doesn't give you a slow, meandering introduction to the landscape or the trees.
No, not at all.
You are thrust immediately into a high-adrenaline, life-or-death physical intervention.
Right away. And then Chai's partner, Du Zinning, comes running up behind him. Now, we know Chai and Du are constables.
Basically, plainclothes detective.
Right, acting under the radar. And Du assumes that Chai has just taken down their primary target, a criminal known as a flower thief, a guy named Hua Yunlong.
Yeah, a very specific type of criminal.
Let's actually pause there for a second, because I want to make sure you, the listener, understand the stakes here. What exactly does it mean to be hunting a flower thief in this historical context?
Well, a flower thief, or kaiwaze in the Chinese literary tradition, is a highly despised criminal archetype. It translates literally to plucker of blossoms.
Okay, which sounds somewhat poetic, but it's really not.
Not at all. It means a serial rapist. This is usually someone depicted as having, martial arts skills or abilities to bypass security to target women in their homes.
That's terrifying. So they are essentially hunting a super predator.
Exactly. And because the preservation of a woman's chastity and reputation was tied to the entire social and economic standing of her family in this historical framework.
Oh, right. It ruins the whole family.
Yes. A flower thief isn't just committing a physical assault. He is an agent of total social destruction. He ruins marriages, destroys family honor, and unfortunately often drives his victims to suicide.
Wow. So for Chai and Du, catching Hua Yunlong isn't just a job.
No, it's a high-stakes moral crusade. They are out to stop a monster.
That makes the energy of that tackle make so much sense. They think they're pulling down a villain. But Chai rolls the guy over, gets a good look at his face, and the adrenaline just, evaporates.
Complete confusion.
Yeah, he looks at Du and says something along the lines of, "Look at this guy's face. His beard is completely white. Are there flower thieves out here operating at this age?"
It's this bizarre, jarring moment of mistaken identity. It completely punctures the tension of the chase.
It really does. It almost feels like a comedy sketch for a second.
And the author uses that mismatch between expectation and reality to condition you from the very first page. It establishes a rule for the rest of the text.
Which
Appearances are always deceiving. The constables believe they are dispensing righteous justice, but they've actually just intruded upon a private, devastating tragedy.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the constables realize their mistake and they switch modes. They go from being arresting officers to acting like paramedics.
They're trying to revive him.
Right. They start rubbing the old man's back, slapping his face, yelling, "Old man, wake up." They pull him back from the brink of asphyxiation.
Just in time, really.
Yeah. Now, my modern Hollywood-conditioned brain expects the old man to open his eyes, gasp for air, and just collapse into weeping gratitude. Like, "You saved my life, thank you, the gods bless you."
Which would be the standard trope.
Exactly. But that is not what happens at all, is it?
Not in the slightest. The old man, whose name we learn is Fu Yud, wakes up and is instantly venomously angry.
He is furious. He starts screaming at the constables. He essentially calls them young punks and demands to know why they aren't walking on the main road where they belong.
Right, instead of creeping through the woods, meddling in other people's business.
I have a really hard time buying this reaction. I mean, if you are seconds away from death and the rope snaps or someone cuts you down, doesn't human biology dictate a massive rush of relief?
You'd think so, yes.
So why is his immediate instinctual reaction pure anger instead of shock or relief?
To understand the mechanics of his anger, we have to look at the neurobiology and psychology of absolute despair.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, Fuyud hasn't just made a casual decision. He has crossed a massive cognitive threshold. When a human being reaches the point of suicide, especially in this methodical way, the brain's survival instinct is completely overridden.
The instinct that normally keeps us fighting.
Exactly. That instinct normally prioritizes the future. But here, it's been entirely hijacked by the need to escape present, unbearable psychological pain.
He's already done the agonizing mental work of saying goodbye to the world.
Yes. He has accepted death as the only logical solution to a problem he cannot fix. He closed the door behind him.
So the relief I'm talking about only happens if the underlying problem that drove him to the tree is actually solved.
Precisely. And the constables didn't solve Fu Yu's problem. They just forced him back into a body that now has to experience that insurmountable problem all over again.
Wow. So from his perspective, they haven't saved him at all.
They have condemned him to die twice. He even says this to them explicitly. He tells them they have just compounded his suffering.
It's like, imagine a highly trained SWAT team busting down a door expecting a cartel boss, only to find an old man struggling with his taxes. And then they yell at him for not being the cartel boss.
It's absurd, but deeply tragic. Chai is completely taken aback by this hostility.
Yeah, Chai tries to defend their actions. He points out that, look, any human being with a basic conscience would intervene if they saw an old man hanging from a tree. You can't just expect people to walk past that.
Which is a fair point from the constable's perspective.
But it forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question about the nature of intervention. If you save a drowning man, but you leave him stranded on a deserted island with no food or water, did you actually do him a favor?
You've merely changed the timeline of his suffering. And that is the philosophical trap the constables find themselves in right now.
They initiated a rescue without the capacity to provide actual salvation. Well, Chai and Du are decent guys despite being yelled at. They ask Fu Yu to explain himself. They're like, look, tell us why you are so determined to die. Maybe we can actually help you.
And Fu Yu finally relents.
He sits down in the dirt and starts unpacking his backstory. And this backstory really opens up into the sociology of the era.
It gives us a window into the systemic issues of the time.
He tells them he was a loyal servant to a magistrate named Feng Wentai, and he goes out of his way to emphasize that Magistrate Feng was a clean official.
Yes, he uses the phrase, 2 sleeves of clear wind.
2 sleeves of clear wind. I love that imagery. What does that mean practically?
It's one of the most famous idioms in Chinese political history. Liang Shu King Feng.
Yeah.
The imagery is quite literal. The official robes of the magistrate had these massive sweeping sleeves.
Right.
And corrupt officials would use those wide sleeves to hide the silver and gold bribes they accepted.
So a clean official had nothing weighing his sleeves down.
Exactly. When he lifted his arms, only the clean, uncorrupted wind blew through them.
Which sounds incredibly noble. It's the absolute pinnacle of the Confucian ideal. But the way Su Yu tells the story, this perfect integrity is exactly what destroys the family.
It's a devastating irony.
Magistrate Feng dies in office, and because he never took a dime of corrupt money, his family is left utterly destitute. They don't even have the funds to properly transport his coffin home.
Let alone support his widow, son, and daughter.
See, I find myself feeling strangely frustrated with this magistrate. It feels almost selfish to prioritize your abstract moral purity over the basic survival of your own children. Am I looking at that through too modern of a lens?
You're looking at it through a practical lens, which is exactly the tension the author wants you to feel. To understand why this is such a catastrophe, we need to dive into the economic reality of the historical Chinese bureaucratic system.
Okay, let's get into it. Why were they so poor?
The imperial court notoriously underpaid its local magistrates. The official salary provided by the state was often barely enough to feed the magistrate's immediate family.
Wait, really? Just the family?
Yeah, and that doesn't even account for the massive staff of clerks, runners, guards, and administrative aides required to actually run a county.
Hold on. The state didn't pay the police and the clerks.
In many periods, no. Or they paid them an absolute pittance. The system implicitly expected the magistrate to generate local revenue.
Meaning bribes.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
They called them customary fees. It's a polite term for systemic bribes, skimming off tax collection, or accepting gifts from wealthy local families to resolve legal disputes.
So the entire administrative apparatus ran on this baseline corruption.
Exactly. If you were a magistrate and you refused to play the game, if you truly kept 2 sleeves of clear wind, you weren't just being noble.
You were sabotaging your own office.
You were actively fighting a massive, entrenched economic machine. You would have to pay your staff out of your own meager salary, which meant you were constantly operating at a deficit.
Wow. So being a purely moral person in this specific environment was a guarantee of financial ruin.
Absolutely. The text is highlighting a profound irony. Society demands and reveres the clean official in poetry and song, but the grim reality is that virtue is economically punitive.
The magistrate's integrity bought him a spotless historical reputation, but it left his dependents completely vulnerable to starvation the moment his heart stopped beating.
And that vulnerability crystallizes into an immediate, terrifying crisis for the widow.
Right, because the late magistrate's daughter is betrothed to the Zhu family. And this isn't just a casual engagement. The prospective father-in-law is a high-ranking official in the Ministry of Personnel in Linen City.
That is a staggering level of power.
The ministry personnel controlled all the jobs, right?
Yeah, the appointments, promotions, and demotions of every civil servant in the empire.
Yeah.
To marry into that family was to secure your own family's political and economic future for generations.
But the widow gets a letter from the Zhu family saying, "We are ready for the wedding. Send the bride." The problem is she has no dowry. She has absolutely nothing.
It's a desperate situation.
And I want to understand the gravity of this for you listening. Why couldn't she just write back and say, "Hey, my husband was a hero of the state, but we are broke. We need to delay the wedding, or maybe you guys can cover the costs"?
Because that would be an invitation to total social annihilation. In this deeply stratified society, a marriage wasn't just a union of two people.
Right. It was a merger of two households.
Exactly, a merger of status and capital. The dowry was the physical manifestation of the bride's family's worth and her leverage in her new household.
So if she shows up empty-handed.
If she arrives at the estate of a high-ranking minister with empty hands, she is signaling that her family is worthless. She would be treated with utter contempt by her in-laws, likely relegated to a status barely above a servant.
That's brutal.
And her family would lose all mianzi, all face and reputation. In a society where reputation is currency, losing face to that degree is a fate worse than death. It would destroy her brother's prospects, her mother's standing, everything.
So the widow is backed into a terrifying corner. She turns to her most loyal remaining servant, Fu Yud, and sends him on a desperate mission.
A humiliating mission, really.
She sends him to Zhenjing Prefecture, where her own brother is serving as a second prefect. A second prefect is a fairly high-ranking regional official, so this guy has money.
He certainly does.
Fu Yud's mission is to swallow his pride, go to this brother-in-law, and literally beg for 200 taels of silver just so they can cobble together a minimal dowry and save the daughter's life, essentially.
And this interaction with the brother-in-law is a masterclass in the psychology of conditional charity.
It's so painful to read.
It is one of the most painfully realistic moments in the text.
It really is. Fu Yud arrives, drops to his knees, and explains that the great noble magistrate Feng died with nothing and the family is facing ruin.
And how does the brother-in-law react?
He immediately goes on the offensive. He starts complaining bitterly. He says, "If my sister is struggling so badly, why didn't you just bring her and the kids here to me? Now she's all the way over there making things incredibly difficult for everyone. Why is she doing this to me?"
He centers himself entirely in her tragedy.
Exactly. He layers on this heavy, suffocating guilt trip. But then he turns around and gives Fu Yud 600 taels of silver.
Which is 3 times the amount the widow actually asked for.
Right. 500 taels designated for the dowry, and he specifically gives 100 taels to Fu Yud himself, saying, "You are an old man, the roads are hard, use this for your own travel expenses and comfort. I see your loyalty."
Which sounds incredibly benevolent.
On paper, yeah. If we just look at the ledger, this brother-in-law looks incredibly generous. He fully funded the dowry and gave the servant a massive bonus. So why does this interaction feel so incredibly toxic when you read it?
Because the brother-in-law is weaponizing his generosity. He is practicing a very specific form of passive-aggressive financial dominance.
Okay, unpack that. How is it dominant?
By giving 3 times what was asked, he is establishing absolute leverage. He is saying, "I am the savior of this family, and you will never ever forget it."
Oh, wow.
But by wrapping that gift in complaints about how much of a burden his sister is, he ensures that the widow and Fu Yud cannot simply accept the money with joy.
They have to accept it with guilt.
They must accept it with profound humiliation.
He's attaching an emotional anchor to the silver. It makes me think of that one relative that people dread asking for help. Let's say your car breaks down and you need to borrow $1,000 to keep your job.
Right.
And the relative writes you a check for $2,000, but as they hand it over, they spend 20 minutes lecturing you about your life choices, your budget, and how they had to cancel their own vacation to help you.
That is exactly the dynamic.
They solve your mechanical problem, but they install themselves as a permanent fixture of guilt in your psychology.
It is a transactional relationship disguised as familial duty. And the impact of this on Fu Yud is critical to the plot.
Because he's just the servant.
Exactly. He is not a family member. He is a servant whose entire identity is built on loyalty. He is deeply protective of his mistress's dignity.
So when the brother-in-law insults her...
When the brother-in-law insults the widow while handing over the money, Fu Yud is forced to swallow that insult to secure the silver. He internalizes that humiliation.
The pressure on him is now unimaginable.
He isn't just carrying money. He is carrying his master's honor, the daughter's survival, and the toxic, heavy judgment of the brother-in-law.
And that psychological weight dictates his physical actions on the road. We need to talk about the physical reality of 600 taels of silver. How heavy is that? Why doesn't he just put it in a sack and walk home?
600 taels of silver is roughly equivalent to about 22 kilograms, or nearly 50 pounds of solid metal.
50 pounds. For an old man walking hundreds of miles.
Yes. It is incredibly heavy, it is bulky, and most importantly, it jingles.
Oh, right. It makes noise.
It is impossible to carry discreetly. In an era where travel was done largely on foot or by cart through rural areas, carrying 50 pounds of silver is effectively painting a massive target on your back for every bandit within 50 miles.
So Fu Yud makes what seems like a very tactical, intelligent decision. He goes to a local exchange or a silversmith, and he converts that 50 pounds of silver into 12 gold ingots.
Gold has a much higher value-to-weight ratio.
Much easier to carry. He then takes those 12 gold ingots and sews them into a specialized waist belt, like a hidden money belt that straps tightly against his skin under his robes.
He's doing everything logically possible to mitigate the risk of the road.
He is attempting to control his environment through rational precautions, but the narrative is about to demonstrate how quickly human rationality collapses when biology intervenes.
The environment just turns on him.
He sets out on the journey back, and the elements just batter him. The text specifically notes that he suffers from the extreme heat of the midday sun, followed by the severe biting cold of the night air.
A recipe for disaster.
This exposure wrecks his internal system, and he develops a devastating stomachache. It's so agonizing that his legs literally give out. He drags himself off the main road, collapses under a tree in the woods, and is just curled up, groaning in pain. He's completely immobilized.
In traditional Chinese medicine, this would be diagnosed as a violent clash of exogenous pathogenic factors.
What does that mean exactly?
Extreme yang heat and yin cold, invading the body and disrupting the qi in the digestive tract. It creates a physical vulnerability that makes the psychological attack possible.
Right. And as he is lying there completely helpless, a young man walks up.
Enter the predator.
The text describes him as being in his 20s, looking somewhat scholarly or at least presentable, and strangely, he's carrying a rope.
Which is an important detail.
He sees an old man writhing on the ground, walks over, and puts on this incredibly convincing display of empathy. He says, "Old uncle, why are you lying in the dirt? What's wrong?"
He plays the concerned citizen perfectly.
Fu Yud, who is desperate and in blinding pain, says, "My stomach is tearing me apart. I can't take another step."
And here is where the trap is sprung. The thief doesn't pull a knife. He pulls a remedy.
The young man says, "Oh, you are suffering from a cold heat clash. You are in luck. I happen to have some medicine."
He diagnoses him on the spot.
He pulls out 2 specific pills called Shaya Wanjin Ding. These are essentially traditional cholera or severe fever pills designed to combat acute gastrointestinal distress.
He hands them to Fu Yud.
Now, put yourself in the old man's shoes. You are in agonizing pain, you are miles from a doctor, and this kind stranger offers you the exact cure you need. You aren't thinking about your gold.
You are thinking about making the pain stop,
So Fu Yud swallows the pills.
which initiates the cognitive bypass we discussed earlier.
I want to dig into that. How does this work as a crime? Because this feels so much more sophisticated than a mugging.
It is a profound manipulation of human biology. When the human body is experiencing acute, severe pain, the brain narrows its focus entirely on survival and relief.
It shuts down everything else.
Exactly. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for critical thinking, risk assessment, and suspicion, is essentially dialed down. The thief understands this mechanism perfectly.
So if he wasn't sick,
If he had approached Fu Yud while the old man was healthy and walking, Fu Yud would have been guarded, defensive, and fiercely protective of the belt. But by approaching him during a medical crisis, the thief becomes a savior, not a threat.
he hacks the old man's nervous system by offering a biological override to the pain.
It's horrifyingly brilliant.
The pills, of course, are not cholera medicine. They are a highly potent sedative. Almost the second they hit Fu Yud's stomach, his vision blurs, his body goes limp, and he falls into a deep, drug-induced coma.
Complete defenselessness.
When he finally regains consciousness, the sun has moved, his head is spinning, and he looks around. The young, empathetic man is entirely gone.
But the devastation is just beginning.
Fu Yud instinctively reaches for his midsection. His robes are torn open, the specialized waist belt is gone. All 12 gold ingots, the dowry, the travel money, the absolute last hope for his master's family have vanished.
Taken without a fight.
But the thief didn't just take the money, the thief left something behind. Sitting in the dirt, right next to where Fu Yude's head had been resting, is the coarse hemp rope the young man had been carrying.
The inclusion of the rope elevates this from a simple robbery to an act of supreme psychological cruelty. I want us to really unpack the mechanics of this gesture.
Please, because when I read that, it made my blood run cold. It is so deeply sinister. Why leave the rope?
Because it is a calculated message that proves the thief knew exactly the magnitude of his crime. If you steal a few coins from a traveler, they are angry.
Sure, they're inconvenienced.
But if you steal a hidden belt containing 12 ingots of solid gold from a desperate old man, you know with absolute certainty you haven't just stolen his wealth.
You've stolen his reason to exist.
You have stolen his honor. The thief leaves the rope as a silent, mocking suggestion. It is a communication that says, I know I just destroyed your life. I know you cannot return home and face your masters.
So here is the tool to finish the job I started.
Exactly. It is an invitation to suicide.
It's the ultimate violation. The thief weaponized trust to steal the gold and then weaponized shame to provide the execution method. It's like an ancient version of a modern social engineering hack or getting a spiked drink from a friendly stranger at a bar.
It exploits our fundamental reliance on human connection.
And the terrifying part is how flawlessly it works. Fu Yude wakes up, sees the empty space where the belt was, sees the rope, and does the brutal calculus in his head.
He runs out of options instantly.
He imagines going back to the widow empty-handed. He imagines trying to explain this completely unbelievable story. Like, who is going to believe that a nice young man gave him magic pills and vanished?
No one, especially not the cynical brother-in-law.
Right. The brother-in-law would instantly accuse Fu Yude of embezzling the funds. The shame would be a public spectacle.
He is trapped in a logic puzzle with no exit. Death becomes the only rational business decision left to protect what little dignity remains.
So he picks up the thief's rope, ties it to the tree branch, steps up, and drops. Which brings us exactly back to the opening second of where Chai Yuanlu tackles him out of the air.
Now the audience has the full context. We understand exactly why Fu Yude was furiously angry at the constables for cutting him down.
They didn't solve the problem of the 12 gold ingots. They just forced him to experience the humiliation of his failure all over again.
Exactly.
So Chai and Du are sitting there in the woods having just listened to this harrowing, heartbreaking story. And because they are trained investigators, the cognitive gears start turning.
They start looking at the evidence.
They look at the rope, they look at the old man, they look at the empty woods, and they realize a massive truth. There is no Hua Yunlong in this forest.
The serial rapist they were chasing was a ghost.
They realize they have been completely manipulated. They were sent into this specific patch of woods by someone who knew their professional ambitions, knew they would sprint after any shadow resembling a criminal, and timed it perfectly so their path would intersect with Fu Yude's suicide attempt at the exact right second.
They recognize that they are pawns on someone else's chessboard.
They are caught in a trap set by Jigong.
This is a crucial moment in the narrative. In a lot of classical literature, characters remain oblivious to the divine or karmic machinery operating around them.
Right, they just think it's coincidence.
But Chai and Du possess a sort of meta-awareness.
Mm.
They recognize the vectors of karma that Jigong has manipulated. They realize their righteous anger and their desire for justice were just fuel.
Fuel used by the monk to power a rescue mission they never volunteered for.
Exactly.
And because they are human, they are deeply annoyed by this. They are tired, they've been tricked, and now they have a suicidal old man crying in the dirt that they are morally obligated to manage.
They resent being used.
So Chai looks at Do and says, you know what? I'm not playing this game. We're going to turn the tables on the monk.
They decide to fight back against destiny.
They crouch down next to Fu Yude and say, listen to me, old man. Stop crying. Don't hang yourself. If you wait right here, in a few minutes, a crazy, poor monk is going to come walking down that path from the south.
Giving him a new mission.
When he gets here, you run over, you grab his robes, and you demand your gold from him. Do not let him leave until he produces your 12 ingots.
They are attempting to force the architect of the situation to take physical responsibility for the outcome.
It's a very pragmatic, almost bureaucratic response to divine intervention. Like, you broke it, you bought it.
Exactly.
And right on cue, Coming up the path from the south is Jigong. Now, for listeners who might not be familiar with the cultural archetype of Jigong, we need to set the scene because you are picturing a serene, glowing, meditative Zen master gliding over the grass. You are completely wrong.
Far from it.
Describe what Jigong looks and acts like in this moment.
Jigong, historically based on a real Southern Song dynasty Buddhist monk named Daoji, is the ultimate embodiment of the crazy wisdom tradition in Chan or Zen Buddhism.
Crazy wisdom.
Yes. When he walks into the scene, he is wearing heavily patched, filthy, ragged robes. His shoes are falling apart. He is carrying a broken palm leaf fan.
And he's drunk, right?
Most importantly, he is entirely, spectacularly drunk. He is stumbling, his steps are erratic, and he is singing at the top of his lungs.
He is loudly broadcasting his own insanity. He comes stumbling up, singing a poem that translates roughly to, you say, I'm crazy, someone wants to learn my crazy symptoms, must give the poor monk a bottle of wine.
It's an aggressive disruption of the established tone.
He crashes into this incredibly tense scene of a botched suicide and two angry cops, looks around with glazed eyes, and slurs, hey, what's going on here? Who is this guy?
He completely ignores the gravity of the situation.
Chai and Du immediately confront him. They say, don't play dumb, monk. You sent us here. Here is the old man. He lost 600 taels of silver in gold ingots. Fix it.
And Jigong's response is a masterclass in deflection and exposing hypocrisy.
What does he do?
He looks at the constables, sways on his feet, and says, well, do you two have 600 taels to give him?
He immediately flips the burden of salvation back onto the state authorities.
Exactly.
Chai and Du are flustered. They say, of course we don't. We're government employees. We have maybe 200 taels between us, and that's our official travel stipend for the hunt. We can't just give him state funds.
And Jigong traps them in their own logic. He points out that they intervene violently to stop a death, but they completely lack the resources to sustain the life they saved.
Which is exactly what Fu Yud was yelling at them about earlier.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Jigong is saying, if you don't have the money to replace what he lost, how can you claim to be his saviors?
Yeah.
You haven't fixed the problem. You've just made yourselves feel righteous by delaying the inevitable.
Right. And then Jigong does something that I found deeply shocking when I first read it. Since the constables admit they can't help financially, Jigong turns his attention to the weeping Fu Yud.
And delivers the punchline.
He says, well, since these fine officers can't give you the money, and you clearly still need to die, come here. Let the poor monk help you tie a proper noose so you can get back to hanging yourself.
It is an incredibly dark, jarring statement.
It really is. It completely subverts the traditional savior archetype. A standard religious figure in literature would offer comforting platitudes, promise that heaven will provide, or speak of the virtues of suffering.
Instead, Jigong offers to tie the knot.
Why? I mean, I know it's a joke, but it feels so cruel in the moment. Why does a figure representing enlightenment use such brutal sarcasm with a victim of trauma?
To understand the how of Jigong's method, you have to look at the concept of a pattern interrupt in psychology.
Like breaking a habit.
Yes, fused with the Chan Buddhist concept of prajna, or direct unfiltered insight. Fu Yud is locked in a cognitive death spiral. He cannot see past his loss.
And the cops are stuck too.
The constables are locked in a spiral of bureaucratic annoyance and self-righteousness. If Jigong tries to reason with them, they will just argue using their existing flawed logic.
So he uses shock value.
By offering to tie the noose, Jigong introduces a concept so bizarre, so completely inappropriate to the expected social script, that it violently short-circuits their mental loops.
It snaps them out of their trance.
Exactly. The shock forces Fu Yud to stop crying and stare at the monk. It forces the constables to stop complaining and look at the absurdity of the situation.
It's like a disruptive thinker in a modern corporate crisis.
Jigong's chaotic humor acts as a sledgehammer to the rigid structures of despair and duty that have trapped these men. He proves that logic and conventional morality have failed. Therefore, they must open themselves to an illogical, unconventional solution.
And the second he has their undivided, bewildered attention, Jigong pivots. He drops the joke about the noose and issues a cryptic prophecy.
The hook for the next act.
He tells Fu Yud, follow us to the village of Qianjiaku, a few miles from here. Once we arrive at the village entrance, you stand and watch. Whoever shouts loudly and runs straight toward me, that person is the source of your lost wealth.
Notice what he does not say here.
He doesn't say he caught the thief.
He does not promise to catch the thief. He does not promise to magically materialize gold from his sleeves.
He just gives them this weird set of instructions.
He promises a completely nonsensical chain of events, Someone shouting and running will equate to financial restoration. He demands a leap of faith into the absurd.
And they take it because they have literally no other options. So this bizarre quartet forms. You have two undercover detectives, a suicidal servant whose robes are torn open, and a drunken singing monk.
Quite the visual.
And they start walking the 4 or 5 li, which is roughly a mile and a half toward the village of Gyeonggi-aku. And as they walk, Jigong starts singing another song. But this isn't the crazy poem from before.
No, this is a mountain song, and the lyrics are incredibly specific.
The song is the philosophical core. It is the thesis statement for what the author wants you to understand about the nature of existence.
Let's hear the lyrics.
I'm going to read the translation of the lyrics, and I really want us to pull this apart. Jigong sings, "You love wealth, must bring it from a past life. I am not arranging your fate. There is a heavenly Lord. When times are good, people repay your debts. When times are bad, you are sold by others."
It's a direct commentary on what just happened to Fu Yud.
It feels like an exposition on karmic economics.
Yes, and it presents a worldview that is deeply challenging to the modern Western concept of free will and self-determination.
I struggle with this concept. The idea that you love wealth, must bring it from a past life, implies that human agency is largely an illusion.
Like a pre-written ledger.
Right. And it sounds like a ledger that was written before you were even born. If I work hard, save my money, and build a business, the modern view is that I earned that wealth through my own merit.
But Jigong's song seems to suggest otherwise.
It suggests that I'm just withdrawing funds from a cosmic bank account that I funded in a previous reincarnation.
That is exactly how the Song and Ming Dynasty audience would have understood the karmic ledger. It is a system of absolute, inescapable accounting.
So when the song says, "When times are bad, you are sold by others," that perfectly explains Fu Yu's robbery.
Yes, the thief with the fake medicine did not just get lucky. The thief was an agent of karma, extracting a debt from Fu Yu's cosmic ledger at a moment of predetermined vulnerability.
So the thief wasn't acting on free will either. He was just fulfilling a cosmic transaction?
Within this specific philosophical framework, yes, the actors change, the methods change, but the balance sheet must always reconcile to zero.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
And the profound comfort in this seemingly deterministic view is that if the loss was karmically dictated, the restoration can also be karmically dictated.
Because the universe owes you a refund.
If you didn't truly lose the money, because you made a mistake, but because a debt was called due, then the universe can orchestrate a refund in equally bizarre ways, which is exactly what Jigong is preparing them for.
And the universe does not wait long to deliver. As soon as the group arrives at the entrance to the village of Gyeonggi-aku, the prophecy explodes into reality.
Right on schedule.
Someone at the end of the street screams at the top of their lungs, "Holy monk, elder, you are finally here. We have been looking for you, like drilling into ice to find fire or squeezing sand to get oil."
Those are fantastic colloquial idioms. They convey a search that is fundamentally impossible and driven by sheer desperation.
Two massive men sprint down the street and throw themselves to their knees right in the dirt in front of Jigong. And the author pauses the narrative here to give us an incredibly vivid, almost cinematic visual description of these two men.
The contrast here is crucial.
Picture this. You have Jigong in dirty, gray, ripped rags. And kneeling in front of him is a man who is described as being 8 feet tall with massively broad shoulders. He is wearing a soft turban made of pink silk and red satin, embroidered in 5 distinct colors. He has on a bright pink silk and red archery robe, cinched with a thick silk sash and fast walking boots.
Very subtle.
Not at all. His face is pale white, but he has a flared, aggressive jawline. His name is Yang Meng, and his martial arts nickname is the Sick Talisman God.
It is an overwhelming visual aesthetic. This is not the clothing of a peasant or a subtle traveler.
And the guy next to him is just as loud. He's wearing a sapphire blue satin turban and a matching sapphire blue archery robe. His face is described as pale gold. He has thick, heavy eyebrows, wide, glaring eyes, and a massive yellow beard that covers his entire chest.
He's wearing a sweeping hero's cloak over the whole outfit, too.
Yes. This is Chen Shao, whose nickname is the Lord of the Beautiful Beard.
These descriptions serve a very specific purpose. These men are professional bodyguards, essentially high-level private military contractors for the elite commercial class.
So the bright clothes are like a uniform.
Their clothing is designed to be a physical branding of intimidation. You see those bright colors and massive frames coming down the road, and you know instantly that whoever they are protecting has the wealth to hire absolute killers. It's meant to project invulnerability.
But right now, that invulnerability is shattered. These giant, terrifying, brightly colored killers are weeping in the dirt at the feet of a drunk monk.
They are completely broken.
Chai and Du, the undercover cops, actually recognize these guys from the martial arts underworld. They ask, "What is going on? Why are you begging?"
And Yang Mang spills out a crisis that completely dwarfs Fu Yude's lost dowry.
The author is executing a massive shift in scale here. We are zooming out from a micro-tragedy to a macroeconomic disaster.
Exactly.
The bodyguards explain that they are escorting a massively wealthy merchant named Wang Zong, and Wang Zong is currently in possession of an almost unbelievable amount of liquid capital.
He is traveling with 300,000 taels of silver.
Let's contextualize that number for you listening, because the zeros can blur together. Fu Yude was driven to attempt suicide over the loss of 600 taels.
And that amount was enough to secure a marriage into a high-ranking ministry family and sustain a noble household.
Right. So 300,000 taels is an astronomical, empire-moving fortune. It is the kind of wealth that funds armies or dictates regional economies.
And the man holding this fortune is currently dying in a local bed and breakfast.
The bodyguards explain that as they were traveling, merchant Wang Zong contracted severe dysentery. They panicked, stopped at the Tomshin Inn right here in the village, and sent for a local village doctor.
But the local doctor was incompetent.
He misdiagnosed the illness and administered the wrong medicine. The medicine caused a catastrophic adverse reaction, and now Wang Zong is lying in his room, weeping, terrified that he is going to die far from home.
He's afraid of becoming a wandering ghost.
Yeah, and leaving his elderly parents behind, all while sitting on top of a mountain of useless silver.
Do you see the brilliant structural parallel the author has built here regarding the concept of medicine?
Yes, it hit me as soon as I read it. We have two completely different crises driven by the exact same mechanism.
Fu Yude was ruined because a criminal weaponized fake medicine to steal a small fortune.
And Wang Zong is being ruined because a well-meaning professional used real medicine incorrectly, thereby threatening an empire of wealth.
It perfectly illustrates the dual edge of intervention we talked about earlier.
Medicine, the very thing designed to heal and restore order, acts as the catalyst for chaos and destruction in both narratives.
And this ties seamlessly back into Jigong's song about fate and the illusion of control.
How so?
Human striving is incredibly fragile, regardless of the scale. It doesn't matter if you are a desperately poor servant trying to scrape together a dowry to save your master's honor, or if you are a phenomenally wealthy merchant titan trying to expand your business empire.
Your plans, your wealth, your entire trajectory are at the absolute mercy of unpredictable, microscopic forces.
A stomachache in a humid forest. A poorly trained village doctor mixing herbs.
Your entire life's work can be erased by biology in a single afternoon.
The bodyguards are desperate. They'd actually ridden all the way to the famous Lingjin Temple in Hangzhou to find Jigong, because his reputation as a miraculous healer is legendary.
But he wasn't there.
The monks there told them Jigong was out wandering, so they rode back in despair. They only found him now because they happened to hear him drunkenly singing his crazy song as he stumbled toward the village entrance.
Which is another intersection of seemingly random events that proves to be vital to the karmic web.
Absolutely.
So let's take a snapshot of the group dynamics as we enter the final act. We now have 6 men standing at the village entrance.
And the text does this brilliant, highly structured thing, where it explicitly outlines the completely different conflicting mindsets of these men as they walk down the main street together.
It is a masterful piece of narrative architecture. The author isolates 4 distinct, competing agendas, all operating simultaneously within the same physical space.
Let's break them down to understand the friction.
Agenda number 1 belongs to Chai and Du, the constables. They have just run into these famous bodyguards, recognize them, and explain, hey, keep it quiet, but we are here undercover hunting the serial rapist Hua Yunlong.
So their minds are entirely focused on law enforcement, threat assessment, and catching a violent predator. They are scanning the village for a criminal.
They are operating strictly within the realm of secular justice and professional duty. They are on the clock.
And agenda number 2.
Agenda number 2 belongs to Fu Yude. The old man is walking right behind these 2 giant bodyguards, just staring at the back of their heads.
Why?
Because Jigong's prophecy is echoing in his mind. Whoever shouts loudly and runs toward me is your wealth. These 2 giants just shouted and ran.
So Fu Yude is completely oblivious to the dying merchant or the undercover cops.
He is just doing the math, thinking, okay, when is the polite time to ask these terrifying mercenaries for my 600 taels?
He is laser-focused on his prophecy. He views the bodyguards not as people, but purely as instruments of his own financial salvation.
Agenda number 3 belongs to the bodyguards, Yang Meng and Chen Xiao. They could not care less about an undercover police sting, and they certainly don't care about some old man walking behind them.
They are in a state of absolute, hyper-focused panic.
They just want to grab Jigong by the arm, drag him to the Tongshan Inn, and force him to cure their boss so they don't lose their incredibly lucrative jobs and their reputations.
Their drive is pure survival and economic preservation. They need a medical intervention immediately.
And finally, agenda number 4 belongs to Jigong. The monk who holds the key to all of these crises is walking down the street. He looks to the west side of the road and spots a large tavern with a flag hanging out front.
The Huying Lu.
Yes, the Gathering of Heroes Pavilion. Jigong stops dead in his tracks. He looks at this group of highly stressed, desperate men, points at the tavern, and says, "Everyone, let's go inside." The poor monk wants a cup of wine.
He is the gravitational center for the entire group, yet his stated desire is the most trivial and hedonistic of them all.
The text makes a point of noting that absolutely no one in the group wants to go into the tavern. The cops want to hunt. The old man wants his gold. The bodyguards want to get to the sickbed. They are all vibrating with anxiety.
But nobody dares to refuse the magical monk who might hold the cure.
So, gritting their teeth, this bizarre entourage of 6 men shuffles into the Gathering of Heroes Pavilion and sits down around a table.
This tavern acts as a crucible for the narrative. All these completely separate threads, a stolen dowry, a dying merchant, an undercover police hunt, and the monk's thirst for wine have been pulled tightly into a single knot.
And the climax happens right here at the table. Ji Gong orders his wine, takes a sip, and then makes a declaration that shocks the table.
What does he say?
He looks at Chai and Du, the constables who are itching to leave and search the village, and he says, "You don't need to go anywhere. To catch the flower thief, Huayamong, we must wait right here."